I'm Chap Bettis, author of The Disciple Making Parent, and this is my audio blog, where I read some of my blog posts in audio format for your convenience. And in today's episode, we're going to be thinking about how we handle grandparents who disagree. I was recently asked this question at a conference. We are Christians, but both sets of our parents are not. How do we handle their disagreement with how we're raising our children, meaning their grandchildren? Well, thankfully, Sharon and I had wonderfully supportive parents. However, I've talked with enough families to begin to understand some of the problems. And I know I risk giving simplistic answers to complex family situations and dynamics, but nevertheless, here is my reply. God tells us that we're to honor our parents. And although we don't obey them as adults, we're still called to honor them. And so I think this plays out in several ways. First, we should not speak evil of them in front of our children. We want to encourage honor for them in our children. Even if we must end up disagreeing or having frank conversations, we always want to present them in the best light possible to our children. In frustration, it may be easy to complain about them to our spouse with our children accidentally listening in. So number one, we should not speak evil of them in front of our children. Number two, out of honor, seek to understand the concern they're expressing. Rather than just assuming they don't have any wisdom because they're not Christians, assume they do have some wisdom because they've lived longer. You don't have to follow everything they say because you listen to it. Try to dig underneath. Ask, what is it that you're seeing that you think we don't see? What is your concern? So number two, out of honor, seek to understand the concern they're expressing. Number three, in most cases, the biological child ought to speak with the grandparents in question. If there's a tense discussion to have, it can often diffuse some of the tension by having the mother talk to her parents or the father talk to his parents. There are exceptions, obviously, depending on the trust or lack of trust, but in general, this principle holds true. So number three, in most cases, the biological child ought to speak with the grandparents in question. Number four, be willing to allow the grandparents to spoil in their house. That's the role of grandparents. It's their house, so they can set the rules. My wife's grandfather used to say, if you don't like the pancakes, you can throw it on the floor. Well, it will take work to undo some of the spoiling when they get home, but that's okay. Being spoiled a little bit will not hurt your children. So number four, be willing to allow the grandparents to spoil in their house. Number five, on the other hand, we can't let grandparents undermine our authority. Unfortunately, I've heard of some situations where the grandparents essentially tell the children, well, your mom says we can't do this, but we're going to anyway. Well, this is a wrong response by the grandparents. But if we, the parents, were maybe a little less strict, it might not put the grandparents in such an awkward position. Related to this, we want to secure the grandparents' buy-in on a standard that we might ask them to enforce. So, number five, we don't want to let grandparents undermine our authority. Number six, there's one big exception to these last points, and that's electronic access. We want to be extra vigilant about the electronic access kids have at the grandparents. Do they have filters on their devices? And number seven, in addition, electronic devices as gifts might also be an exception. Similar to the last point, while we may allow grandparents to purchase gifts for children at our house, I think I would strongly discourage them from purchasing electronics. We want it to be very clear that we, the parents, are providing use of electronics that belong to us. Therefore, we can limit access time, we can have passwords, and we can go on it anytime we want to. After all, it doesn't belong to the child, but it belongs to us. We are merely letting them borrow it for a moment. Number seven, electronic devices as gifts might also be an exception to letting our grandparents spoil their grandchildren. No doubt there are an infinite number of scenarios based on family relationships and values. And I just offer these 7 principles as a way forward. Thank you for listening to the Disciple Making Parent audio blog. This article is found in the material of our video course, Parenting with Confidence. It's a video-driven study on the biblical foundations of parenting, and it's specifically aimed at parents of young children. You can find more information on our website or at parentingwithconfidencestudy.com. Thanks for listening.